Imagine never closing your eyes again. You would be fully awake for every single second of the rest of your life. Sleep is not a hobby. It is not a luxury. It is a biological non-negotiable. If you decided today that you were done with sleep, you wouldn't just feel tired. You would begin a rapid, horrifying biological collapse that would end your life in a matter of weeks. Most people think sleep is just resting. That is wrong. Your brain is a highly active machine that produces a mountain of toxic waste products every single day. While you are awake, your neurons fire constantly, creating byproducts like amyloid beta, the same proteins linked to Alzheimer's disease. When you sleep, your glymphatic system kicks in. It acts like a power washer for your brain, flushing out these toxins through cerebral spinal fluid. Without sleep, your brain literally begins to poison itself from the inside out. Let's look at the timeline of your demise. You decide to stay awake. You skip night one. By the 24-hour mark, your brain is already showing signs of impairment. You feel sluggish. Your reaction times are comparable to someone with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.10%, which is legally drunk in every state in the US. Your emotional regulation starts to fray. You become irritable, impulsive, and your ability to process complex information takes a massive nosedive. At 36 hours, your body starts to panic. Your blood pressure rises. Your heart rate increases. Your body releases an excess of cortisol, the stress hormone, into your bloodstream. You are now physically vibrating with anxiety. Your immune system begins to throttle back. If you cut your finger at this point, it would take significantly longer to heal than it did yesterday. At 48 hours, you have entered the danger zone. Your immune system is struggling. Inflammation markers like C-reactive proteins skyrocket. Your body's ability to regulate insulin drops, meaning your blood sugar levels become wildly unstable. This is the moment where reality begins to blur. You might start experiencing microsleeps, brief involuntary blackouts lasting seconds. Your brain is forcing you to sleep, even if you refuse to let it. By 72 hours, the hallucinations begin. This isn't like the movies where you see ghosts. This is neurological breakdown. You might see patterns dancing on the walls. You might hear voices that aren't there. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and decision-making, begins to shut down. You are effectively living in a waking dream, unable to distinguish between external reality and the firing of your own exhausted neurons. In 1964, a 17-year-old student named Randy Gardner set out to break the world record for sleep deprivation. He stayed awake for 264 hours, 11 days. By the end, he couldn't speak coherently. He had massive memory lapses. He was paranoid. He thought a street sign was a human being. He survived, but he suffered from long-term insomnia for years afterward. His case is one of the most documented in history, and it proves that the human mind simply cannot function without the reset button of REM and deep sleep. If you somehow forced yourself to go beyond the 11-day mark, you would enter uncharted territory. There is a rare, incurable condition called fatal familial insomnia. It is a genetic prion disease where the brain loses the ability to enter the sleep state entirely. It starts with mild insomnia, then leads to panic attacks, phobias, and hallucinations. Eventually, the patient stops sleeping altogether. The physical decline is absolute. Within months, the body loses the ability to regulate its own temperature and autonomic functions. The heart fails, the brain dies. It is a 100% fatal condition. Why is sleep so essential? Think of your DNA. During the day, your cells are exposed to radiation, oxidative stress, and environmental damage. Your DNA develops tiny breaks and errors. When you sleep, your cells focus on repair. They mend the damaged strands. They synthesize proteins. If you stop sleeping, you stop repairing your genetic code. You are effectively accelerating your own aging process by an order of magnitude. Furthermore, sleep is when your brain consolidates memory. When you learn a new skill or study for a test, your brain encodes that information. But that memory is fragile. It is stored in the hippocampus, a temporary holding area. During deep sleep, Your brain moves that information into the neocortex for long-term storage. If you don't sleep, you don't form new memories. You become a person who lives in an eternal now, unable to build on what you learned the day before. Your personality is also a byproduct of sleep. Your empathy, your sense of humor, your patience, these are all managed by the frontal lobes. Without sleep, these brain regions disconnect from your emotional centers. You become a hollow version of yourself. You lose the ability to read social cues. You lose the ability to feel genuine joy. You become a biological shell, acting on pure, primal survival instinct. Consider the economics of your body. Your heart beats 100,000 times a day. It pumps 2,000 gallons of blood through 60,000 miles of vessels. Sleep is the only time your heart gets a break. During non-REM sleep, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate slows, and your muscles relax. If you keep your body in a state of high alert wakefulness for weeks on end, you are essentially redlining a car engine until the pistons melt. You will experience arrhythmias, your vessels will harden, and your cardiovascular risk will explode. What about your appetite? Sleep deprivation disrupts your ghrelin and leptin levels. Ghrelin is the hormone that tells you to eat. Leptin is the hormone that tells you you're full. When you stop sleeping, ghrelin goes through the roof and leptin plummets. You will be ravenously hungry, yet your metabolism will slow down to conserve energy. You would gain weight rapidly, not because you need the calories, but because your hunger hormones are malfunctioning. By the second week, your brain is essentially in a state of neurotoxicity. You are no longer thinking, you are processing noise. The brain's electrical activity becomes erratic. You might suffer from seizures. The connection between your brain and your muscles will stutter. You might experience muscle tremors or loss of coordination. You will look like a shadow of a person. Your skin will be pale and sallow. Your eyes will be sunken and bloodshot from the broken capillaries caused by the sustained pressure of staying awake. It is important to understand that sleep is not a passive state. It is an active, complex neurological performance. It is a symphony of neurotransmitters like adenosine, melatonin, and GABA working in harmony to keep you human. When you pull the plug on sleep, you aren't just losing rest, you are silencing the orchestra. History is filled with attempts to bypass the need for sleep. Soldiers in the trenches were given amphetamines to stay awake. Truck drivers used caffeine and nicotine to push past their limits. But in every single case, the human brain eventually reclaimed its right to shut down. The microsleep is the body's ultimate failsafe. If you try to stay awake for 2 weeks, your brain will eventually force you into a state of unconsciousness, whether you want it or not. You will collapse on the floor and stay there for 15 hours or more, because the biological debt you have accumulated is a loan shark that always comes to collect. If we look at the animal kingdom, sleep is universal. Fruit flies sleep. Jellyfish, which don't even have a central brain, show periods of inactivity that mirror sleep cycles. Even sharks, which need to move to breathe, have found ways to enter restful, sleep-like states. If evolution went to the trouble of making every living creature on Earth sleep, despite the obvious danger of being vulnerable to predators, then sleep must be the most important task we perform. You might dream of a world where you never have to sleep. You could read more books, learn more skills, earn more money. You could live double the life of an average human. But you would be wrong. You wouldn't be living double, you would be dead in a fraction of the time. Nature does not grant shortcuts. There is no biological loophole. The architecture of your body is built on a foundation of rest and restoration. You are a diurnal animal, hardwired to sync with the rising and setting of the sun. You are made of chemicals that require specific cycles to replenish. You are made of cells that require specific windows of time to repair. If you stopped sleeping forever, you would not be a superhuman. You would be a broken system. Your mind would dissolve, your memories would vanish, your organs would fail. You would spend your final days in a confused, terrified fog, witnessing the slow, agonizing shutdown of the most sophisticated piece of machinery in the known universe. Sleep is not the enemy of productivity. It is not a waste of time. It is the very mechanism that allows you to exist as a conscious being. Without that daily surrender to the dark, the light of your mind would simply burn out. The next time you feel the heavy weight of your eyelids, don't fight it. Don't reach for another cup of coffee. Don't tell yourself you have one more thing to finish. Recognize the urge for what it is, your brain's way of keeping you alive, keeping you sane, and keeping you yourself. In a world that demands we always be on, the most radical thing you can do is let go. Because ultimately, the ability to sleep is the difference between a life that is lived and a life that is merely ending. The clock is always ticking, but when you fall asleep, you reset the timer. So tonight, when you lay your head down, remember, you aren't just going to sleep. You are performing the single most essential task of your existence. You are choosing to continue your life tomorrow.